welcome this holiday weekend in which we celebrate our black soldiers and those that assisted them in uh, advancing our humanity. You are tuned in to the level set, and we have a full complement this morning with the Mike Jones, Dr. Charles Alexander, an attorney, Jerry L. Kwame Christmas, fresh off another graduation in which another one of his, progeny have gone up the rungs of intellectual self-actualization further. So we're glad to have everyone here today, and we have some phenomenal topics we're going to get right into. And we will, off the top, acknowledge that the month of May is designated by the United States as Mental Health Month, but as you have heard us say time and time again, every day is Mental Health Month, Mental Health Day at the level set. And speaking of mental health, we are going to delve into our first topic, which intertwines these things that we spoke about with none other than Dr. Charles Alexander. Doc, if you could give the foundation for the initial discussion this morning, we can delve into that. And yeah, with no further delay, sir, I,
Okay.
I defer.
Yes, yes. Good morning. Good morning. Um, so we have a lot of conversation on here about um the quality of education, past and present. And I was looking up information relative to that. And I came across a report that I had never seen before. And it is the 1966 Coleman report. Didn't know it existed. Very familiar with both the Kerner and the Moynihan reports. Um, um, and so, so we had 65, 66, and 68. So I think Moynihan was 65, Coleman report was 66, and the Kerner report was 68. And so the Kerner report, or excuse me, the Coleman report looked at quality of education in the United States at that time, and um, in essence, what it found was that um, there were stark educational gaps between um, black students and white students, and and I think the kind of like the main point for a lot of people at the time, or the surprising point for a lot of people at the time, is that um, it wasn't that the report didn't find that there were just absolute differences um, in terms of extracurricular activities, um, staffing, da 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 da. It was kind of hit or miss, but the main thing was that there were that these gaps were a function of discrimination, so racism, and um, and really kind of how the family's socioeconomic status and how the family was facing, or what resources the family had in order to manage this situation. And so um, and so that was kind of the thing, and of course that became uh, an issue of debate, depending on who may have been reading it and depending on what people's thoughts were coming into it. Um, but for me, kind of confirms my general thesis, and that is we look back on that time as if that time was good when it don't make sense to believe that, because that's why we had civil rights movement, because things weren't good. And and kind of as we'll ultimately talk about today, as we move into our conversation about the NAACP and the CBC, um, you know, when we can kind of blend these. We can go ahead and blend these. Uh, we know the CBC. So now there's this move to encourage um, uh, students, black students, to boycott um, SEC and ACC schools. And so that brings about the question about, is that a question that we should be asking children? And I don't want to go full bore into this part. I just want to contextualize kind of what we're looking at. And that is, even in the movement, we're looking at a subset of kids. The majority of kids, particularly when we're talking about the sit-ins and we're talking about SNCC, we're talking about middle-class black kids. We're not talking about the masses of black kids. We're talking about middle-class black kids. We're talking about Birmingham and the Children's Crusade. We're talking about middle-class kids, period. A subset. We're not talking about the masses. And that's kind of where we get stuck in all of this. Um, and that's kind of what the Coleman report is saying, is that there was some clear class distinctions. All black kids. Like, I didn't go to so when I went to Douglas Elementary, which is, by any measure, anything you read about Douglas Elementary or the institution from its start till its close, it was an exceptional institution. One of the things we did not have at Douglas was overcrowding and unprepared teachers and a bunch of broke parents. That's not what we had in Webster. Of course, we have people like that in Webster, but that wasn't that was not the
The
over.
norm.
Right. That wasn't the norm, and so that impacted our educational experience. And so
And the principal is a world-renowned educator, happens to be one of your frat brothers, the principal. So, I mean, that was just, it's
and before him, because and that's the whole thing. There's a whole history of Douglas before we even get to Dr. Gibbons. But when we look back, we don't like to admit this kind of thing, but when we look back, we do the same thing that we accuse white folks of with American exceptionalism. We look at the most exceptional black folks and try to make them the standard. No, they're exceptional, but they're exceptional people that are black fighting on our behalf. And so the Coleman report kind of lays this out, and I thought that the video was very good, because you get to see people at that time kind of having these discussions and saying other things that we say today that are patently false. Folks talking about teachers shouldn't have to blah blah. Teachers do have to do that. Teachers have to be concerned about the welfare of the kid in their class, because that teacher has that kid, that school has that kid 8 hours a day. So that's how we ended up with so,
local
like, we didn't
parentis.
start
That's why
we
it's
didn't
called
start
local parentis.
yes, but we didn't start breakfast and lunch programs last year. Them things they've existed since the 50s, right? And so we come up with this stuff because, first of all, because we meaning black folks, we continue uh, we continue to um, be overly dependent, kind of similar to the conversation we were having in the green room about where we're overly indexed. We continue to say we don't know and we haven't been exposed because white folks don't teach and expose us. That's this place. And so this information is out there. We also say, if white folks just knew, white folks know us better than us. This is what they do. They study us. This is what they've been doing. This is why they went and got us. They went and got us because they were studying what was going on the continent. That's why they went and got us. And so they were in search of the wealth and the knowledge of the continent. And so they
And,
went and got us.
to your point, very briefly, Doc, as bumbling navigator as Christopher Columbus was, his notes on the Native Americans and individuals were copious.
Well, and again, as bumbling as he was, he didn't accidentally go to Africa. He went to Africa on purpose.
That is correct. And his
And,
notes
and,
on
and that's how he found out how he could get across. That's how they found out about the waterways that take you from the west coast into the Caribbean, because the Africans on the coast already knew it existed. And so we have to do the deep dives. But the Coleman report is great because, again, it fits into all of the rest of the conversations that we have, that somehow it's not a somehow, they just necessarily going to take us back into that time frame, to that 50s, 60s, early 70s time frame. And so this is a companion document that goes with both the Moynihan and the Kerner reports.
Gerald, I want you to get in there and give us your comments on that because I want Mike Jones to, to almost not close, but to summate this because as close as he has have been in politics and education at that point, I think that's a culminating mindset that we want to build up to. So, what are your thoughts, Jerry L. T. Kwame Christmas,
So,
attorney
so
at
this
law?
education or mental health?
With respect to this education piece, I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to spend much time with the Coleman report, but we're talking about this, in part, this romanticism that we have with the way things were, and this false narrative about the role of present teachers that we have, and the failure to admit that this is an asymmetrical, at times, struggle. We're talking about the middle class and its sacrifices and the struggle, and of course the education. And similar to to Dr. Alexander's education, your education in University City was not exactly a pauper's education.
Yeah, I agree. I think you said it was middle class, just like Webster was too. I think that oftentimes when I think back to University City, and I don't know if you think about this the same way, Larry, but our educations were really, segregated. They had two levels at University City. They had, the regular level for us, and then they had an advanced level for whites and Jews in University City. And there was a distinct difference that I didn't understand as a child when I was going through the district. But afterwards, when I look back at it, I see it. And I still see it as being two-tier even today. And I also agree that we do romanticize the past and don't really understand what everyone was going through in that time period. But what I do agree with is what Mike was saying about that time period, where everywhere you went and every place that you were present at, Black people were always teaching you how to deal with the white community and how to deal with white people. And I think that's a major component that's missing now, that's badly needed, because our children are not being taught how to deal with white society. at all. And they have no real understanding about that, no real understanding about the culture or the history, no background to go back to. And this always has been oftentimes the middle class that has had to step in because the lower class didn't have the knowledge or resources to do it. And then a lot of times the maybe the class, if there was a higher class, they just weren't interested or too bought into the white community to do that. I'm not sure. I'd like to hear Mike's opinion on whether or not there really was a higher class at that time period, or did we just have lower and middle class in
And
that time period?
let me insert here because we've bantered uh, this term a couple of times today. I want to insert Fanon's definition of culture, national culture, that is, which is a collective thought process of a people to describe, justify, extol the actions whereby they have joined forces and remained strong. So, I mean, I would love for us to be able to define a working definition of what culture is. Because what we is being, it has really been appropriated in a sense by mercantile, and I think of Russell Simmons talking about the culture with respect to hip hop and imputing that on all black folks, because just as we were talking about earlier, in terms of uh, being the gatekeeper to advertising dollars, at one point, black newspapers and periodicals were the benchmark. But hip hop and I'm just you. I'm not identifying. I'm not. Casting them in any aspersions. But what they've been able to do is to leverage the black community as if hip hop was the way in to the black community for mercantile now. And to some degree, that is, of course, is true. I mean, we fail. The vast majority of us fail to really fess up to the influence that these images have on our day-to-day choices, particularly in consumerism. But as we go forward, I think that's we need to expand and or really to hone in on what exactly is culture and what is our national culture. Having said that, Mike, I'd like for you to give us your opinion on the statements made by Dr. Alexander and Attorney Christmas.
Okay. uh, while you were talking, I just Googled define culture and just the working definition of culture because I thought I knew it, but I just wanted to make sure. And and culture is the collective way of life of a group of people,
Well,
whatever that is.
let's be 1 second, Mike.
Uh,
The fact of the matter that you and all of your genius went back to redefine a common term is something that we all need to take note of. I just wanted to say that because there are common terms that we use that we don't, that has been some time since we've revisited the definition of them. I think we need to, this may be a time to do so.
That was an example of social learning. We get to watch the elder
Wasn't that something? Wasn't that,
watch the elder
I
learn.
mean, it's almost as if you get to watch Kazi and Bill uh, go through the mental aspect of the game, and you can only get there by watching the greats. But go ahead, Mike.
okay. And to be honest, the last 10, 12 years I spent writing for the American made me very conscious of what words mean. Because when you're a verbal communicator, you're real casual, okay, and you infer a lot of stuff, and you'll pick up, you'll make statements that people, because we say, you know what I mean, right? Well, when you're writing, you can't do that. You have to make sure the word literally means what you think it means. And so I've really, that's really become a habit now of mine that says when something like this comes up, let's say, well, let's just start with Webster or somebody, and then we can disagree with it, but here's the working definition. So culture really encompasses how a group of people live their collective life. Okay, and it's not a value judgment. Some of it could be good. You could say some of it bad, but it's what goes into this. This is on a day to day, year to year, decade to decade way. This is the way we live. This is what we value. This is what we don't value. This is how we cook it. This is how we raise it. Whatever. All of that makes up the culture. Okay, and then we got quote high culture, and that refers to the artistic stuff and what the literature is. But all of that together is the culture of a place, and everybody gets incubated in that culture. Because I looked up incubated earlier in the week, and incubate means to develop it. You know, you put something in, and it's this, and over time it becomes something. So the culture that you are exposed to, born into, forms who you become as a person, as an adult. And for me, it's really two things. The culture doesn't dictate who you become. You have something to say about who you become too, because really, as an adult with agency, who you really are is your response to the culture that incubated you. You know, you're not stamped with it. At some point, the more cognizant or conscious you are of yourself, the more self-aware you are, Charles. I guess I would say that. Using something in your spirit, then you start to choose out of all these forces that are incubating you. You get a chance to choose, or you decide to choose. I'm going to be this. This is how I'm going to react it. And you don't necessarily get a chance to change the culture, but you do get to define who you want to be inside the context of that culture. That being said, one of the things that, and I'm going to go, I think this is statistically verifiable, but I'm going to say anecdotally from memory, I would suggest that in that period of the Coleman report and before, a little bit afterwards, in all those reports, uh, the Black community writ large, no matter where you found it, and you'd always find it in a specific geography. We were not a Black community spread out in any locale, spread out all over the place. We had a fixed location in any of these geographies, and you could say we were segregated based on race because America has a caste system based on race, but America is also a class. It has a class divide. But while we were racially segregated because of caste, we were class integrated. We were economically integrated uh, community because people in that historical era, and that's just called the Jim Crow era, from emancipation, post Reconstruction, into the late 60s, early 70s. We were an integrated community independent of class. You didn't make enough money. You didn't have enough credentials to leave the geography of the black community in this white caste system, period. So what we had then, and Charles was referencing middle class black children. One of the reasons poor, and I'm going to suggest that we had poverty, but I'm going to suggest we didn't have, my sense of this is we didn't have generational poverty because we were economically integrated. So black children of low income parents got to go to the same schools with the same teachers as middle class black children because we all went to black schools. So you could be a low income black child from a dysfunctional family whose best friend was a middle class black child from a functioning family.
But that's what the report shows, though.
I
The
didn't
report,
read that. Okay, but what I'm
no,
saying
no,
is,
no, 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 no. I mean,
yeah,
but it doesn't show it in the context that you just described.
yeah, but
Showed it in the context that when they have equal access to white institutions, that that when they are in proximity to them, that there are benefits along those lines. But what you just stated, the report gleaned over very little. But that is a topic that, I mean, that is a point that we need to let sink in.
I want to expand it. It was profound because if that little boy was friends to that little boy, that that child from the economically depressed, say even maybe dysfunctional household, got to see other role models have other experiences. Because, for example, when they're putting the baseball team together, everybody gets to play. The little poor kid, you don't say, and it's $5 to for the uniforms and whatever. He gets somebody picks up his $5 too. So he goes through like and nobody ever moved. Okay, everybody grew up in the same neighborhood. So even though his immediate family was this, he had these other experiences. Because if he came home with you, or he came home with somebody, your mama would say, "I know you're hungry. Come on," and they didn't make a deal out of him being poor. Okay, you was just part. This was this village taking care of these children, so that child got chance to see other things larger than just what was going on in his house. Also, all those middle class teachers sent their children and doctors and stuff to these all same schools. Okay, and all of a sudden, the teachers are educating everybody at the highest level. So if you're talking about folks my age and older, it's amazing, but you didn't think anything of it. And now it seems like it never happened. But Ben Carson, who obviously after he had the brain thing went crazy with Trump and stuff, but his, but but he grew up in Detroit projects. Mother was illiterate. I mean, what I'm saying, you got a scattered of stories. I mean, it was a typical story about somebody from the lower income strata of the black community ending up being a neurosurgeon or something else just because of the overall organic nature of the black culture that we were in. And it was roped off from the white community. So if you were a black child growing up in the black community, you didn't meet no white folks. So you were never polluted with that. Okay. I mean,
Exactly.
you didn't never have to while you were vulnerable and being formed as a child, you never had to deal with that shit.
And I
Okay.
think that's a real issue, Mike, that you're talking about now, because I like how you just said you didn't have to be polluted with that. And
Right.
that's what's happening now. our children have been polluted with it, and we have lost that village concept, and that's the major
But
problem that we have
we didn't
now.
choose the village, but we didn't choose the village concept.
I know
The
we
village,
didn't choose it. I agree with you. I
yeah, the
agree.
village,
It just existed out of circumstances, but we
right.
benefited out of it. We
Well, no,
benefited tremendously.
what
But
I'm
hasn't this
saying
been
is,
happening for more than 50 years?
right.
Say that again.
This has been happening for more. So, so
You mean most recently?
I think the other thing is so like if we even go back to Brown, most people contemplate Brown at the Thurgood Marshall level. It's 200 claimants in that case. It's 5 separate cases over 4 states. We were not happy. And so, yes, these spaces exist that Mike's talking about, that I was talking about, that you all are talking about. But that wasn't the norm. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had Brown. I cannot believe that a whole bunch of happy black folks said, let's go to court to be unhappy and
Wait a
close with
minute,
white folks.
Charles.
No, I'm
And this,
not.
and also this is, we also have to look at our demographics and
Let
our
me add,
geography.
let me add this
Yeah.
to the mix you're about the stew you're making, Mike. Brown was about the resources.
Right.
Nobody
That's my point.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, nobody was going
Nobody
to
was
court so
trying to
we could
go to
sit
school
next.
with white folks
So
for the sake of going to school with white
exactly,
folks.
we just
It
they
was
wanted
not,
buses. They
it
wanted
was
buses in Topeka.
it was separate and unequal
Right.
was the legal norm. And there were direct implications. And one of the things that this report said is that even once you look at that, there was variance. We get stuck on the good side of the variance.
Right.
The majority of folks' situation was bad.
Wait a minute.
Bad,
And
bad,
here,
bad, bad. And it's bad now.
wait a minute. And here's also kind of the point of that. Even today, the majority of black folks live in the Confederacy. 47% now,
It's
but
always been.
always been. And the Confederacy is the most backward white folks, poorest white folks. So to be in Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, everybody there ass is broke. Not that there ain't some rich people. The dumbest white people you will ever meet are from places like West Virginia and Tennessee. So anybody, what were you talking about when you talk about us? We black folks in urban areas being discriminated against. So even as we're being discriminated against and segregated, our shit's up here being shortchanged. If you in Mississippi and Alabama, it's these broke ass crackers that are shortchanging you. So they ain't got a pot to piss in or window to throw it out of, and you got less than them. And fundamentally, you ain't got no bootstraps to pull
Pull
yourself
yourself up.
up by. Because ain't nobody down there got no boots. They ain't got none either. If it happened to you in Chicago, New York, or St. Louis back then, LA, it's still funky, but it ain't the state penitentiary. It's their federal form over there. Now you still locked up and can't go home, but they both ain't the same places. So it's our lack of historical context that throws us off. Secondly, the reason you could have an organic and had for about 75 years post Reconstruction doing Jim Crow is with this black educated middle class in the same spaces as all other black people. You had people with the intellectual and organizational skills to be leadership, plus the leisure time. Okay. One of the first things I had to do when I decided I wanted to be a politician, I had to figure out how to get out of being at Union Electric punching a clock. Because you can't be no leader when you say, well, I can't take a telephone call because I'm on the assembly line and I ain't got a phone on my desk. I mean, so there are some things that go with being in leadership, and one of them is some resources above subsistence, whatever that means, and having enough control or agency over your day-to-day time that you can do things that don't tie you up literally with making a living. But if you go to work at 7 o'clock, get two 15-minute breaks and a half hour for lunch, you can't do nothing for nobody for for 8 hours by definition. If you
Can't be a
happen to,
revolutionary just on the weekends.
yeah, that's it. You can't be a revolutionary on weekends or after 5 o'clock. Okay, so it is a reason why the middle class kids were the activists in the 50s, the 60s, and college. Because one, they had been, for us, raised with some privilege that allowed them to be more expansive. They also were incubated in a black culture that was very pro-black and tied to trying to advance the race. So advancing the race was a fundamental value. Now they may have argued about how you do it, but but that was not a subject of debate. So they came to this space kind of prepared with a predisposition for change. And they had looked at change agents before them. They weren't the first generation of change agents. We had been in the change uh, uh, agenda of advancing that ever since starting with Reconstruction and through Jim Crow. So they are the extension, or they are a manifestation of an extended struggle. And this is just what it looked like by the 1950s. And by the 1960s, you had young black people say, "We tired of messing with white folks in America," and basically screw America and the white folks that brought us here. So now you got a whole class of emerging black middle class professional, even if they wasn't raised middle class, they gone to college. And for a large extent, to this day, to this day, I never feel threatened by anything America feels threatened by. I don't. The Chinese don't. I don't feel threatened by the Chinese rise in power. I don't feel threatened by the Russians. I don't. I do worry. I do feel threatened if I'm driving someplace in Missouri that I normally don't go. So the the one thing that happened for a brief moment in those 60s is we was carving out some space that connected us to a larger struggle internationally. And that sprung back into what I would call neo-colonial Negro. And that is, well, we need to be here in America and we're trying to fit in. And the literal fact is what Du Bois said: a system cannot fail you that was not designed for you. And we keep insisting that it includes us. And for me, the most absurd thing that I've listened to for the last couple of years is black pundits on every show talking about saving American democracy or our democracy. And I want to say, fool, everything that has happened to us is a function of American democracy. That was a democratic republic that were voted into power by the people that voted. The Supreme Court didn't just pop up. It ain't kangaroo court. Those 9 justices are all a function of American democracy. We've been enslaved, persecuted, and oppressed by the Democratic Republic of the United States of America.
And that flag.
And that flag. Yeah.
And that flag. Not the stars and bars.
Right.
That same flag.
The stars and stripes.
Yes.
And your dumb black ass is talking about our democracy.
Yep.
Yeah, well,
and that's all they're talking about. And that's where the problem comes in now, is because they will fight you. I'm talking about black people will fight you over that argument. And that is, the loss of having that village and having that mixture of individuals in different economics.
Who was the pastor at Dexter before Dr. King?
I ain't got a clue. His daddy.
No.
Yeah, I thought wasn't his father the pastor at one point?
No.
No, his father was. I'm talking.
His father was the pastor of Ebenezer in Atlanta.
Ebenezer.
Right.
Okay.
And right. So the pastor at Dexter before he got there was Vernon Johns. And so they got rid of Vernon Johns because the same people that we're talking about now lived then. They got rid of Vernon Johns because Vernon Johns was an activist.
He was radical. Yeah.
They went and got the young king because they thought he was malleable. They didn't think he was going to come in there and get involved with Edie Nixon and Rosa Parks, who was already an activist before she sat on that that bus. They got rid of Vernon Johns because they thought they'd get this smart young guy from a good family from Atlanta who was up at Crozier and bring him in. They didn't know that this was going to happen. We've always had these people. These people ain't new.
Wait a minute, Charles, I want to reinforce that. There was never a consensus in the black community about us and America. But there was a time we argued with each other about it all the time. And we don't have that argument or debate internally anymore. Fundamentally, there is no black intellectual cohort of any critical mass that is discussing who we are in America, independent of America. So
there is, Mike. That's what we're doing right now.
But we ain't a critical mass, okay? and I'm saying there was a time that was an ongoing debate. Had always been a so. Marcus Garvey and Elijah Muhammad are not one-off. They are products of a strain of thought in the black community that has always been here or had always been here. And even the folks like Du Bois, who didn't agree with them, recognized why they were saying what they. I mean, so when I'm saying this was a discussion, and when I say argument, I don't mean people did. I mean argument from a debate standpoint, where somebody would say, "I understand what you're saying, but." And we ain't got the numbers for this. Like Dr. King used his Christian theology to rationalize the only political strategy he thought he could come up with because we didn't have numbers. Okay, and so then if this is gonna have to be our strategy because we ain't got the numbers. What's the intellectual or philosophical justification for it? And him being a Christian theologian, that's why he went through that door. Somebody like Marcus Garvey or Elijah Muhammad, who ain't Christian theologians, say that shit don't work for me. But then Du Bois would tell them, but we ain't got the numbers, man. Even if I always think, we've had this discussion about Shields Green, but I think one of the most fascinating nights in American history must have been the night Frederick Douglass and John Brown talked about this, Harper's Ferry. Okay, and the old white man say, we're going down there, take the guns, and we're gonna start the revolution. And the brother who was a warrior said, no, what we go, if we do that, what we gonna do is get killed. It ain't gonna be no movement. Okay, so so what cowardice is grown men trying to
Reasoning.
figure out
It's
how
called
to go
game.
forward.
That was game theory.
Yeah.
And so, and that's, and that's, so what we take out of that, and your general point is kind of how we get into the situation now where we have, the NAACP and the CBC telling kids don't go to the SEC, which ultimately I'm fine with, but as a strategy, that can't be the strategy. There has to be a strategy that informs that, and like they don't have no answer.
The thing is, well, let's do this as we transition to that. And I also want to add, as we transition to that, Doc, that Mike's description of the cross-pollination of students and the families is the exact experience that many in HBCUs experience all the time. That
And
that yeah, and
yeah, I mean,
and as
depending
we
on which HBCU you go to, because
it
I think
really
we got to
does.
be honest about that too. All
Well, that's
HBCUs
true. That's
are
true.
not created equal,
They are
and they
not.
don't generate the same thing, and they don't even do the same thing.
Yeah,
And
but
so we got to be on point with that as well. But the
but
other piece that we can't leave out of this is that we had core, then well, we had the NAACP, and we had core, we had, or if we do it in order, I guess we had the NAACP, the Urban League, core, the SCLC, then SNCC, right? So we had these all of these entities that are part of what they also did, which is lacking now, and why our kids don't move the same way as high school and some cases elementary school and college students moved then, is because it was an informed movement, and so the core was doing freedom rides in the 40s. We talk about SNCC in the 60s, but the freedom rides in the lunchroom counter demonstrations started in the 40s. They were doing lunchroom counter demonstrations in St. Louis in the 40s. Core at Sticksbury and Fuller. And so, they were doing it in middle of in Chicago and in Peoria in the 40s. C.T. Vivian, that folks keep calling one of Dr. King's lieutenants. He was in this game before folks even knew who Dr. King was. Dr. King was still in college. He was already in. And so, but all of these things were occurring. Now, part of the reason we don't have those things is J. Edgar Hoover and COINTELPRO. We don't have that kind of planning now because everything that we had got infiltrated.
Chuck, I want you to say that again, and here's the preface I want you to put on it. The first time the FBI was at State Department, Justice Department was weaponized to go after, in a political manner, to go after people that were objecting to stuff ain't Donald Trump. Donald Trump did
This
not
ain't new.
invent this. So say that, please.
It starts with you and you mentioned Marcus Garvey. It starts with Garvey. That's why we got an FBI. We got FBI because of Marcus Garvey.
And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize that and don't have that understanding. And I mean, specifically Black people in this
Well, now,
time period.
and
Because when
Gerald,
Donald Trump makes that assertion and then wants to set this fund up for people who have been attacked by the Justice Department, the first thing that came to my mind would be us.
wait, Gerald, I want you to expand that. And I would say this, that one of the things we don't have an appreciation for is that we're also caught up in the macro culture of the United States. Okay, now our little scrap may have a different kind of flavor on a different vibe in the sense we're on the 2 and 4 and the white folks is on the 1 and 3, but we still got the same macro culture. So here's what that means: that Black people in America in mass are just like white people in America. And that means they are the most actively ignorant people in the Western developed world. Period. You will not find anybody on the planet in a developed country that is more ignorant than the average educated American, no matter what their racial ethnicity is. I guarantee you that. That the ability to have an informed conversation with a person within a larger context, you got zero chance of that happening in the United States. You could have coffee in any cafe in Europe, and whoever you were sitting there having coffee with could tell you damn near everything that's going on in the world. Can't nobody here tell you shit. And we as dumb as they are. Now that's our problem.
And
No
and that's why
disagreement.
we continue to have and we have these reactionary responses to things. Now, so Mike said it earlier. He referred to the South as the Confederacy. When I say that, folks laugh at me. This thing, that's all it is. That's all it's ever been. That's all it's ever gonna be.
That's all they wanted to be.
That's all they wanted to be. These jokers tried to secede again. they that's what they wanted. That's what they want. That's who they are. You know, and so again, I find so now as a result of gerrymandering, not because we should have been having this discussion otherwise. We're at a point where we come up with a reactionary response to the SEC and the ACC because of gerrymandering, not because these are hateful places otherwise. It's crazy. And because of that, we don't have no plan. All we're saying is, kids stop going there.
Well, I
But
mean, how do you say that I don't have a plan?
and so
Because you can say that our plan is to keep our kids from going. So we're going to absolve from participating since we don't have it's a group of children is what we're dealing with.
well,
Engaged in
and again,
cosplay.
and
Engaged in
and
cosplay.
and and again, like we go back to our other point. So like you can find this. There's a recording. There's a video. So in '63, Kenneth Clark, who he and his wife, they're the doctors who did the Dow study. Most folks don't know that the Dow study is intimately, involved and engaged as a part of the strategy
Right.
for Brown. People just think that it was a study that was done, but it was strategic. But anyway, in '63, he did 3 interviews. He did an interview with Dr. King. He did an interview with Malcolm, and he did an interview with James Baldwin. And one of the questions that that Kenneth Clark asked Dr. King, he's like, well, what about the use of children and youth in the movement? And Dr. King says every kid that is involved in the movement is trained in the techniques of nonviolence. So, and we've talked about this before, there are many times where you could, talk to Dr. King, and I'm sure there are other interviews with other folks in various parts of the movement where they talk about strategy. And they didn't do anything without doing the field work that informed the strategy, right? And so I get it right now. Okay, let's tell our kids to go somewhere else, but where is that 5 to 16% going to go? And and what we gonna get for going there, right?
Right.
So, because ultimately, when you're having that conversation about the SEC and the ACC, you're really talking about sports. You ain't talking about just that average kid. You talking about the multi-million-dollar industry that is college football and secondarily basketball. That's what you're talking about. And so, but depending on the school, we're talking about 5%, and at the high end, we're talking about 16% of any one of those schools. And again, it's fine, but all right, so Mr. Jeffries, are we going to attach this to some kind of, funding bill that enhances and improves the capacity for HBCUs? Is that what you're going to do? What are you going to do? Because part of the reason that those kids go there is because that's the state they live in.
Wait a minute.
So where are you going to
And
send them when they don't go there?
wait a minute. And Charles, the other point is the bag gonna be there? Because ain't nobody going to these schools because they want to go to the school. They going to the school for two reasons. If you're an elite athlete in a sport, you think this is the best place for you to exhibit to get to where you're really trying to go.
Correct.
And that's why football players have to stay 4 years because they got to get bigger and stronger. Basketball players don't stay no longer than they have to. So it's kind of like in women's sport, the WNBA can't pay what the colleges pay. So she'll stay in school because the bag is bigger. So the reality is, it's been 30 years since a kid went to college on an athletic scholarship because he or she wanted to go to college. An elite Division I athlete just needs a place to play ball with whatever the sport is till they can go on to what they hope to be their permanent career. If you're not good enough to be considered for the professional level, ain't nobody in the SEC recruiting you, okay? And you can't tell a kid who could be sitting on a $2-3 million LIN thing or whatever they call that shit.
NIL. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't tell them, hey, I need you to give up the $3 million for the movement, and he don't even know who you are. That shit sounds crazy.
And so, I,
Nor
I'm
has he
all
been
I'm
getting this
all for
information.
trying to bankrupt the SEC. I don't give a damn about neither. I want them gone.
Right.
Because that's all they are. That's all they ever been is the Confederacy. Whether we can vote or not, it's the Confederacy. And so I want it gone, but it gotta be a strategy to this.
What
It's
is
gotta be
the
something
plan?
for these kids to do. And it has to include some training, to your point, by like you telling him for the movement, he's like, What, what are you talking about? They was fighting so that we could go to Georgia. Now you telling me we can't go to Georgia? That's what a smart kid would say. He would say that. Now he may not have the context for the larger piece, but he would be right. We fought so that we could play and attend and play at Georgia, at Alabama, and now you telling me don't go. Okay, well, this is why you shouldn't go, and this is what we're gonna do because you can't go there. If we can't replace that, then this is not really a viable thing, and it's just talk. And this is what lessons are. This decreases our buy-in. This is how we lose people because we ain't saying nothing substantive. We just talking, right? And there has to be a plan. There got to be a plan for the kid not to opt in. And again, and we probably aren't talking about some super duper large number of students. But they got to go somewhere, and they got to go somewhere where it's equitable. It can't be that we're just moving them because ultimately it's got to be a part of the fight if that's what if that's what you're doing.
This is a brilliant
Joe,
analysis. This is a brilliant analysis by you, Doc, and Mike and Jerry L. But the silent treatment doesn't work against gangsters. And
wait, here's there.
That's why you gotta have strategy.
Wait,
You gotta
there,
be
that's
able
what
to
I'm
act.
saying. But that's what we're dealing with. We're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with folks saying that I'm not going to speak to you and I'm going to absolve. All these boycotts and all this this absolving from taken out of a system suggests that the system is already won. You don't have an alternative. You refuse to do the hard work to create one. And so you're going to act like a petulant child and ask for people to make sacrifices that will not impact you at the
That don't impact
kitchen
you.
table at all, and you call yourself in leadership. It really is abysmal, and it
wait,
is an affront to Martin Delaney and every slave and every ancestor that's ever made a sacrifice for us. Mike, don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere, and don't start that dying on screen thing either. It looked like he was choking. You come back because I'm going right back to you. But I mean, this
And
is
you have these same people that are
it's
asking these
ridiculous.
people to make those sacrifices, Larry, who are believing in the system and won't even challenge the system, and they right there in the system at
wait a
the
minute.
top
I mean,
level.
they
I,
are
And yet they asking
colonialists.
these children,
He
they
telling
asking
he
these
wait,
telling
children
these
to
people don't
sacrifice,
take the
and
bag, and he take the
they
bag.
won't take the same
They
sacrifice
will
at
not.
all.
They will
wait a
not.
minute.
They
Hakeem
have not
Not
gone
at
Jefferson,
through. They
all.
haven't
Hakeem
even
Jefferson
gone
takes the
through.
James
bag.
They
He
haven't
telling
even
Jasmine
them
gone.
don't
Crockett
take the
rolled in
bag.
here in St. Louis endorsing Wesley Bell. What the hell? How the hell you gonna come to St. Louis uh uh uh
Talking about
and
Jasmine
endorse?
Crockett. He's talking about Jasmine Crockett, folks. Go ahead.
Yeah. How the hell you
But
gonna come here endorsing a damn Wesley Bell and they just then whooped your ass in Texas? You know what I'm saying? And he all for that system that just put you out of Congress. It
wait,
don't make
here,
no sense.
here, I'll give you something they could do in January. Say you lose 15, 16 black Congress people in the Jim Crow South through redistricting. That'll leave you with about 40. Okay. Okay. That even if the Democrats, if the Democrats take the House, they might, best case scenario, they'll have a 25 seat margin, which is comfortable working, but it ain't like forever. And you still got two black senators. You got three black senators because you got the sister from Maryland, right? And you could say, you know what? I don't need all y'all. All the 50 million black folks, y'all can stay home. The 50 of us just had a meeting. And I'm gonna say this on a Sunday morning because I mean it just like this. And we decided that we gonna shut this bitch down. You think Trump was bad? You think Trump was bad? We about to shut it down. We got 3 senators. Unless y'all do something about the filibuster, we'll shut down the Senate. We got enough numbers in the House to stop y'all from doing anything. I'm gonna give Taiwan back to the Chinese. They ain't got to. They ain't got to figure out how to take it. I'm gonna fix it so you can't keep it. So you said, Larry, you're right. You said they were gangsters, and so you deal with them like they're gangsters. Okay. Purpose and I used to have this expression when we was on the board of Alderman. If you shoot my dog, I'm gonna kill your cat. Period. It's just that simple. I'm not. I can't. You know what? I'm not gonna try to protect the dog.
And see
But but if you
this religion notion that we have, turning the other cheek and that foolishness, that,
no,
that
but
that's gonna get us all that's
I
gonna get
wasn't
us
raised.
all
I
killed.
wasn't raised in church,
No,
so I ain't got no conscience.
even if you were raised in church, you should have the wherewithal at this point to have done enough studying to understand who inserted that and who that benefits. So, I mean, at this point, there's no, I mean, you are under no moral obligation to take a high moral standing with someone that is not taking any moral standing at all. I
I,
just freed
But
you.
that ain't why we don't do.
Why don't we do, Doc?
Because we want to be with them. Gerald just
There you
brought up
go. There you go. Right there. Say it
the.
again, Dr. Alexander.
Gerald
Say
just
it
brought up,
again. They
yeah,
want to be with them.
we're
They
not taking
want to
no,
be
There you
with these
go.
white
yeah, this
folks.
ain't no moral stance. Ain't
There
no,
you
what
go.
moral stance allows you to take money from APEC? That ain't no moral stance.
That,
That's the
well,
bad, and that's
I'm
the
not
other
talking to
foolishness.
Doc. Doc, first of all, you're 100% right, but I'm not talking to that. I'm talking to a small sect that real. I'm telling you, I've talked to these religious zealots that are justifying the white hegemony, and there is a small sect. But you are 100% right.
And
I
I'm
hear
I agree that those people exist too, but they not they not that they're masking their fear.
right.
So that group is masking their fear in biblical terms. They're not gonna do
Mhm.
nothing, period. And they're using that to justify
Wait a
their
minute. Wait a minute.
position. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Because here is what that turn the other cheek thing is. And I'm gonna get the citation. I don't have the exact citation, but Jesus says, if your brother offends you, offer him the other cheek. He don't say everybody.
You
no,
don't
sir.
say your enemy.
No, sir.
Yeah, he don't say everybody.
No,
He
sir.
say if you not, and then he'll tell you later on who your brother is when he's giving the speech. And then the guy said, "Hey, Jesus, wait a minute, man. Your mom and brothers are outside and they need to see you." He stops. He pauses, and he said, "Who is my mother and who is my brother?" And I guess the guy said, "Well, they outside." He said, "No, no, 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 no. You got it wrong. My brother is he who's doing my father's work." So Jesus got a lot of discretion about who he defines as with him
He be
versus
drawing
not.
lines in the sand, Mike Jones.
Yeah, I think he do. I think he do. Now I ain't no preacher, but if I was, that's what I'd be telling folks.
And I ain't a preacher's son,
And
but I
I ain't a
can do a
preacher's
little
son.
preaching till the preacher come. Go ahead, Mike Jones. I hear
But
you.
all I'm saying is now I ain't no child of the book, but that's in the book because I read it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he said. Okay.
All right, keep on.
Now,
Keep
okay.
on.
But that's
Keep
all
on.
I'm
Well,
saying.
let's move to this final topic. The President of the United States was, it appears to be summoned by the prime minister or the president of China this week. And there was a brief encounter that started with the President Xi Jinping not showing up to even receive him at the airport, which is tradition. And we happen to have an individual that has studied Asian politics and protocol extensively. So, Mike Jones, I want to get your thoughts on that specific meeting, and then open it up to the rest of the panel.
Basically, what the Chinese leader just said to the United States is y'all done. Y'all some sorry ass second string white boys on the way out the door, and I got something else to do, so I'm gonna send my vice president to meet y'all. And the thing I'm gonna say out loud: don't fuck with me on Taiwan. Okay, now that's what he said to Trump, and Trump's bitch ass had to take it. So really, what you were watching is the beginning of the end, if not the end, of the American world hegemony. That in 80 years, and the United States got its position in the world because two world wars in less than 20 years had decimated the planet. So wasn't nobody left to be in charge but the United States. And fundamentally, the United States, to me, the fascinating thing about Trump is not Trump. It's that who are the people? Now, Trump didn't sneak into the White House. You know, he had screwed it up once and he picked it again. So this says totally more about America than it says about it. So fundamentally, I would describe America as a chimpanzee with an AK-47 and a Formula 5 racing car. Ain't no telling how much damage
he gonna do.
Right. Okay. Because a chimpanzee could figure out how to drive a car at 180 miles an hour and fire that gun because they got that much sense. But ain't no telling what they will do. So that's what the United States is. You know, they a chimpanzee with an AK-47 and a Formula 5 racing car, okay? Tearing shit up, okay? And you got white folks sounding like Claude Rains in Casablanca when he said, I'm shocked to find that they're gambling and rich. You know, like that they want to be how did this Trump thing happen? Trump happened because you. Okay, period. And our sorry asses keep trying to rationalize it for them too. And it ain't what Donald Trump is to America is what Caligula was to the Roman Empire. It took just about as long. The only thing, matter of fact, I would say that Mike Johnson is the equivalent of Caligula's horse that he made the president of the Roman Senate. Okay. And literally, there was nothing you could do. Now, it took another couple of 100 years for Rome to collapse because time was slower then. Our collapse will come faster. But you're looking at Caligula in Rome and in 2021 America because
Mike, in fact, Xi Jinping told him that to his face,
right,
that we hope that we can avoid the Thucydides trap, which is an international relations theory stating that when a rising power
right.
threatens to displace and establish ruling power, the structural stress caused by fear and ambition makes violent conflict the rule rather than the exception.
Wait, now,
To
but
your face I told you that.
Wait,
You're done.
but
You
you
know,
do, but you
Frank,
do
you're
know,
done.
but you do know there's nobody in America that has read the history of the Peloponnesian War, don't you? Okay. Now,
Yeah.
wait a minute. Here's a guy in China, quote, and Thucydides is considered the first Western historian. The first time anybody tried to write about historical events, because Homer is myth and just stories and stuff. Thucydides and the Peloponnesian War is really considered the first Western legit historical document. So the other thing he could have reminded Trump of is what he said. Thucydides says in the Millennium Dialogue that right as the world goes is only a question among equals in power. The strong do what they can. The weak suffer what they must. So the United States will begin to suffer what 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 they must. And to be honest, if him putting his foot in America's ass it inconveniences my life a little bit, I'm willing to do that. Because I just want to see the ass whooping if you really want to know the truth.
That is, I think that's a sentiment that is taken. It's almost like watching an abusive husband take an ass whooping.
Right.
Uh,
That is what it's like.
yeah, it's watching an abusive or a rapist take an ass whooping.
Right.
That is what we're dealing with right now. And partner, uh, uh, there's nothing here for you. There's nothing here for you. But what we have got to hasten is the death of the colonized black person. Because when this thing dies, it only dies if if the colonized black person dies and emerges as something that it should. So we've got to work on both ends. Dr. Alexander, you look like you've got something that you want to say.
I know, but I will. uh, yeah, we so to your point about the colonized mind, that's
Okay.
that's our ever present, threat. So like that's that for our nation within a nation, our enemy, our domestic enemy is the colonized mind. And so that's another thing that we got to kind of come to grips to. I wasn't aware. I'm glad Gerald shared, but I kind of thought this anyway, so I'm not surprised. So Jasmine Crockett came to St. Louis to support the other clown. That's what you're saying, Gerald?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, she
so
did. At 125 a ticket, and and someone close to me said, "We going? I'm buying tickets." Yada yada yada. Found out what it was about, and that thing was met with such hostility that I don't think Jasmine would have gotten a vote from this person. But go ahead, Doc.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
the only reason now I think we should have. Only reason I didn't go and turn it out, Larry, is because I had to go to the graduation. But I definitely would have went to call them out on it.
like we there so there So there are certainly those of us who know exactly what we're doing in that space, right? And but there are still too many of us that don't know the harm that those people do because we literally get entertained by their performative politics.
Mm.
And so,
Performative politics. Say that again.
yes, I
That's
mean,
all it is.
yeah.
That's
That's
all it
all it
is.
So
is.
I've
folks
used
got
that word
yeah,
5 or 6
folks
times this
got
week.
excited about how they saw her pointing her fingers and rolling her neck and all that kind of stuff. She's not for us. She's not for us. She's for them. Wesley Bell is for them. Hakeem Jeffries is for them. You know, I think it's, yeah. I mean, they're all over the place. if you take money from APEC, you are not for us, you're for them. APEC exists with black politicians for the point for the purpose of knocking off folks that they necessarily don't believe are pro-Israel. And so if you are actively working to divert funds to Israel and not your district, then you for them. You're not for us. But we don't understand that. Too many of us don't. And that's that is a part of our fundamental issue. But to your point, Larry, yeah, they gotta go. We have to continue to do what we do and connect with other like-minded persons in order to kind of, you know, to like we have to cut into that, to that group that Mike is often referring to in terms of, the dumb people. we got we got to cut into that group of uninformed and not knowing folks. Well, I mean, we probably can't do nothing with the dumb people, but the ignorant people, the people who just don't know, we have to work with that group. We got to get to that group and make sure that they are informed, make sure that they know, and if they make decisions intentionally that are not in their best interest, then we know that this isn't a because they're ignorant. We know this is because they are dumb, and so that's the fight. That's the war, and you know, got to be here for that.
As we close out the show, Jerry L, we look at history to plan our future. That's the reason we go back and look at history. As Fanon stated, we don't do it in a vacuum. We do not do it to romanticize. Based on, oh, look here,
Look
he done
here,
been the wardrobe. He closed,
back up.
he been the hair and makeup and wardrobe. We about to close out real quick because I would imagine brunch somewhere is taking
Yeah,
shape.
you got it.
All right, Jared, very, very well. Well, you are gonna have to have half. You got half the time now because we're going to Pretty Boy Mike Jones in a minute. But we look at history to plan our future, as Fanon says. Jerry, what should we be doing, and what should we be doing to plan our future? And
We
I know
got drilled.
let me say this. I know I'm talking to individuals that are doers. All three of you all. So, but go ahead, Jerry, if you could.
Just from our last conversation, the point that sticks to me the most is that we got to get rid of these colonized Negroes.
Okay, Dr.
That
Alexander,
has
what are
to
your
be the
thoughts?
focus.
I mean, that's enough. What are you saying, Doc?
So this goes back to your initial piece. This is Mental Health Awareness Week, or a month, excuse me, that we're closing out. Um, be mindful and don't get duped into this thought that the reason that Black folks are not receiving care is because we're all, we don't believe in it, uh, and stigma and all that kind of stuff. We're not receiving adequate care because this is what disproportionate and indifference, disproportionate access and a lack of access and indifference looks like in the mental health space. So we know what it looks like in all these other spaces. Earlier we were talking about education, but in the mental health space, this is what it looks like. There aren't enough me's to go around. There aren't enough Black doctors. There aren't enough Black psychiatrists. There aren't enough Black social workers, counselors, what have you, to go around. And so the reason why we aren't getting adequate care is because there's just a lack of of services available, and so that becomes another thing that you got to say to the person who's representing you at a local level. We need access to mental health care.
Doc, at some point, I want to have a interdisciplinary discussion with you with respect to the initial construction of the mental health sphere to put up to allow individuals to tolerate the enterprise the commercial enterprise, and to not put the onus on the enterprise, but on the individual, and how you're able to weave around that every day and to deal with it. Mike Jones, but real
Yeah,
quick, it looks like real
yeah.
quick.
Okay, I just got to say, I will close. I'm gonna mess up this phenomenal quote. I don't know what the macro answer is, but I think at the individual level, what he said something to the effect that his one obligation is not to compromise his freedom by his choices. Okay, so the fundamentally, you can't be responsible ultimately for nobody in the world but yourself, and so you ought to dedicate your life to living it in a way that maximizes who you are as a human being. And if we all do that, shit's got to change. I think what Charles will tell you in counseling, that you don't try to, no matter what the situation is, you don't worry about changing everybody else. If you change yourself, then the situation changes. By definition, when you change, everything else has to change.
Woo-wee. All right. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the Level Set Mike Jones. I understand that you're being summoned.
Right.
I have, how do you
Time
know Mike
for
Jones is being summoned without Mike Jones saying he's being summoned? You look here. Oh,
Hey,
hello there.
hello.
Hey, good to
We
see
told
you.
him to go.
I
Yeah.
see y'all.
All right. Well, we will thank you for allowing them to come out and play with us today. And breaking the band up. But thanks a million. We thank you all for tuning into the Level Set. Until next week, we will see you.
That
All
was
right,
good.
Jerry. All right, Jerry L. I'll see you soon. I'm gonna call you in a minute.
All right.